Welcome. You're listening to Practically Happy.
Meow, meow. Welcome to Practically.
Was my meow that assaulting?
Yes. Welcome to Practically Happy with Racer and Rhodes, and today we have a guest on the podcast, Mor.
Hello,
Say hello,
hello.
Mor.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here today.
We tried doing this yesterday, and so many things went fucking wrong.
The universe, but you know what? When you say goes wrong, what you assume
It
to
went
say,
right, but it wasn't what I was planning for.
There you go. When you say goes wrong, what you assume to say is that there's some way it should be, but I've found more and more that I don't know what the fuck is going on.
What?
So I'm humble to whatever's going to go down.
Well,
Also,
I'm
can
going
I
to say
can I
something.
swear on this?
Oh
Yes.
yeah, you're fine. You're fucking fine.
Sweet.
When I say goes wrong, there are only so many SM58s that have broken in my time under my command, and yesterday was one of them. These are indestructible pieces of shit. Those fuckers. I hate them for so many things, but they never break. And then one broke.
Isn't that,
So,
kind of amazing though?
I
It's
blame
kind
the
of-
moon.
The moon did
We're
it.
astrologically, we're in a really weird time right now, and I don't think anything is working properly.
No, absolutely not.
You could say that nothing is working properly, or you could say that things that were working before are not working now.
A shift in a paradigm. One
Well, as
could
you can
previously
already
say, yeah.
tell, this is going to be a very interesting podcast with our guest Mor.
mojo going on.
We have a cool dual energy from spirituality to cosmology to arts to just general screaming.
Yes, yes. Let me
like
give
all those
a little introduction. I love all of those things. Let me give a little introduction for our guest on the podcast today. Mor is a stencil artist who creates paper cut installations, masks, and headdresses. But like many creatives, that's not the only thing she does. She's also a writer and speaker whom I had the pleasure of meeting at an art show many moons ago, where I heard some of her writing spoken aloud. It touched my heart, and she's since become a fan of the podcast.
Touches my heart.
So here we all are together now.
Oh, that's so nice.
If you're watching the video version of the podcast, and if you're not, I would implore you to at least go over to the YouTube channel just
Yeah,
to
for a
look at
sec.
it for a brief moment.
little-
We have one of their masks on the wall behind us.
Imagine a beautiful...
Imagine a
Paper cut
beautiful.
installation
Would you like
piece.
to describe the mask behind us for those listening?
Yeah, totally. So generally with my work, everything I do with a blade. So I do cutouts. This kind of work specifically, I would always cut on a fold. So when I would unfold it, it'd be symmetrical. And it kind of has this like Rorschach-like effect that when you open it up, you can kind of see a bunch of different stuff.
I
But
love that description.
aesthetically, what it was when I made it, I was down in New Orleans when the pandemic hit, which is a blessing. But it is like kind of a demonic looking bat with like two kind of crazy tongues coming out of its mouth. And then it's got like inverted lungs in its ears. And then on top, it's got kind of like a virus kind of symbol. And for me, it was a way to kind of take just those intense, insane feelings and kind of put a face to something frightening. So yeah, that's my Harbinger mask.
Very appropriate title and shape
Oh, yeah.
for the pandemic.
It was a time.
It was a time.
It is giving pandemic.
Oh yeah, hard. Which is because it's giving beauty and horror. So yeah,
For sure. It's also giving a lot of time spent on one thing, which is also a theme.
you'd be
for the
so
pandemic.
surprised. I think I made that in a day.
Really?
Honestly, with some of the works I've seen of yours, I'm not surprised because
wow.
you get big.
Yeah, you know what it is.
You get
It's-
big and you get detailed too.
Thank you. You know what it is? It's like I'm self-taught. I have a GED. The way that I thought I was going to draw, because I love like Daumier, like I love like these really classical kind of known artists. And I thought to get taken seriously, I'd have to draw in this like very like classical way. But I came up doing stencils in the street. And when you're making and cutting a stencil, you kind of have to figure out like it has to both structurally work and also look the way you want it to. So instead of trying to make like the best, coolest, most beautiful, artistically merited thing, you're like, well, how can I make the most effective stencil?
Yeah.
And so I kind of tricked myself into learning to draw like my very own way. And so the way that I draw, I kind of like create a schematic. So when I'm done with a drawing, I know where the negative space is. I know where the positive space is. So I'm ready to cut. It's just a reductive process. I cut out everything that needs to be cut and then I'm like done.
This is crazy similar to printmaking, like this
it
process
is.
that
Yeah.
you're talking
It's
about.
because it is.
It
Because
is. I'm
because
just
that's what
not making
printmaking
connection.
is.
You're like
100%.
creating a stencil. This is a print.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
could print this if you wanted to.
Absolutely. And because then you can work in multiplicity. And that for me was the allure in street work
Yes.
was that you could make something really beautiful.
Available.
Absolutely. And I can tell a story about the origin if you want to hear the story.
Hell yeah.
One of the
Yeah,
stories.
go for it.
So basically, I'm from New York. I've had a crazy life in New York. My family's from here. My dad is a sculptor. Actually, it's funny because the place that I'm living now, you know the 9/11 memorial, like that horn?
Yeah.
My dad made that.
Oh, wow.
So we lived off of that commission, and we were, I guess, squatting. I can't remember. We were sleeping on the stage of a defunct auditorium in Bed-Stuy at the time. So we lived off of that public commission.
Wow.
And so it's very funny now that I find myself back in that neighborhood. But anyway, we were living in a building off next to the Boar's Head Processing Factory, and I was going to school in Marcy in 318, which is a rough
Yeah.
school. Rough school.
I've worked in the school districts a little bit here, so I'm somewhat familiar.
318, they used to lock us in the classrooms when there was no substitute. 7 floors.
Oh.
Took up a whole city block. But I digress.
Oh.
So we were squatting in this building at the time. My dad was a sculptor. And I remember being in the street and I came across this amazing piece. And it was like 2 skeletons having like what looked like a sword fight. And it was a beautiful linoleum block cut by the artist Swoon. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Like, life should not be a mausoleum to art. Like the way that we had lived for my father's work, like there was a lot of suffering for the sake of making big sculptures. But with that work, I was like, oh, like you make it and you put it in the street and you let it live or have a die, but or live or die, and you're generous with it. You give it away.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into making stencils. And it's why I love printmaking, because it takes away the preciousness. You can spend all the time, all the love, all the care, but it's out of true generosity and because you love it. And then you can make it available to people. You can give them away. You can put them in the street. And it's not something reserved for the few who can fucking afford it, which is bullshit because, and then I'll digress, but art belongs to the people and should meet them where they are. And I really fucking believe that.
I could cry in agreement. Like I could, like this is, you're speaking to a very deep place in me, and it's actually kind of why I found a passion for teaching yoga in the meantime. Because yes, it's something I can make money off of, and if I really wanted to push that business side of it, I could, and I might at some point.
Yeah,
running retreats, it's lucrative. But it's also something that I can give to people. It's something that I can now provide to a group of people for no cost or little cost, and it brings something to them. And
absolutely,
and it does remind me of the.
That's the essence.
Yeah.
But you know what? I really feel this way about human work. And there's my favorite Irish poet, John O'Donoghue, God rest his soul, with me in spirit. He talks about it, that all of us are artists. We're all in constant creation of our lives, and we have this idea that some people are artists, and that's bullshit. We're all artists, and we are all artists because we're all creating our lives, and there's such value in human work. And whatever it is that you do, if you really love and enjoy it, it is a gift to others. It is. Yoga, making sandwiches, making pizza.
Sandwich artist.
Fucking
Absolutely.
soundbite right there.
Constructing things. Really, I really believe this, that I value human work, and it's why I love working class people. I am of immigrants. It's why working people get along with each other. And it's not to say that everything is stratified by class, but to get to work is a gift because it teaches you about life. And when you are protected from ever having to do stuff and grow, you don't grow as a person. Like it's a gift to get to work. And whatever you do, wherever you find yourself in life, you can bring value to yourself and others by doing it fully.
Yeah.
I digress.
It's a moment. So I'll take a moment after that.
I got a lot of digressions going on.
No, I think it's very valuable to highlight that as like a note for this entire podcast's ethos is like you do really only learn from some degree of discomfort.
Suffering, yes.
Yeah, you do have to have cause for why you move forward with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I just really believe that it's like it's funny, and I'll tell this story because I'm living in this beautiful house now, which is owned by a family member. That's been happening a lot recently. I was owned by a family member, and it's kind of wonderful timing because I just had a really catastrophic injury. I broke my ankle in like 3 places. I've got pins and screws. It was really traumatic. It was really bad.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm grateful, which is the crazy thing. I'm actually really grateful for it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And to know that is insane. And if you told me months ago that I'd believe that, I'd tell you, you're out of your fucking mind.
I had major hip surgery at one point.
Did you learn a lot?
Well, looking back, I needed it. I needed it for the not because I needed it for my hips.
Surgery?
Yeah.
Dude, I've never met anybody so young who had hip surgery.
I'm like an 80-year-old.
But that's one of the most intense surgeries.
It is.
Oh my God. Holy crap.
I didn't need it for my hips, it turns out. I still have the same issue.
Is it a bone thing?
It was just like chronic pain.
That's the crazy thing. Chronic pain's really interesting. Do you
Yes,
know
it
shit
is.
about Gabor Mate?
Yes. Now I do. So
for
what
someone who
what
doesn't know what that is,
the body. It's about the body. It's about how
Okay,
it
yeah, got you.
stores what is happening in your life. And while
Got you.
the medical
Okay.
system is the only system
Yeah.
that's telling us that you need mechanical solutions
Yeah.
to spiritual problems.
Well,
Yeah.
also mechanical solutions to symptoms which are caused by the entirety of a system.
right.
yeah,
It's like focusing on this one little cut, but literally forgetting that it's bleeding because it's attached to an entire body.
Yes.
Like Gabor Mate's thing, which is wonderful, is essentially that like he's got a great thing on ADHD too, which is great because it's what I have, among other things. But he talks about the real root of it is we learn very early that it is not safe to be ourselves. It is not safe to be as we are. It is not safe to know what we know. It is not safe to feel what we feel. And we are built to survive. And so we're very smart as kids. We'll figure out how to survive. Oh, I can't be that way. I have to be this way. I have to be this way. And what happens is we start to suppress emotion. And the crazy thing about motion is when it gets suppressed, it gets literally stored in the body and it turns into illness and it turns into disease. And that is the root of it. But I digress. And I really,
You don't need to
believe-
digress with that one. You can just
No, that is-
you know. And he's a product like myself of Holocaust survivors, and so he really saw that firsthand. But he's wonderful. I really like hey Jews. We're Jewish. But yeah, I mean, but that just going back to your hip though, I mean, what a thing to go through and then find that your root is actually something
Yes.
beyond that.
But I needed it to know because I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known anything about this or
Nope.
the path that I needed to
It
take
knocks.
in my life.
That's the fucking
Yeah.
crazy thing,
It
man.
knocks so loud.
But it knocks very quietly for a very long
It
time.
does, yes. And that's the process of chronic pain is usually like something like this where like I can ignore this, I can ignore this, I can ignore this.
Until
I
it's
can't ignore this.
unfucking bearable.
Yeah.
That is the thing, because that's the thing I have. I think a lot about it, a lot of different things, but a lot of things I think about are related to attention and your quality of attention. Your whole life is dictated by what you pay attention to and how fully you can pay attention. The thing about attention, though, is if all of your energy, psychological, spiritual, whatever, is being taken up by worry or pain, you don't
Or Instagram
really
reels.
Absolutely. Well, your attention is literally being pilfered from you. It's literally being fucking pilfered from
That's
you.
the industry now.
Absolutely. And
it's a
so
currency.
it is, but it is because it's the only fucking currency we have. All that I have that dictates my entire experience of the world, all my power is rooted in my ability to pay attention and receive.
Yep.
And what these fuckers do is they constantly tell us that you don't need to pay attention because you can get on the train and the same thing's going to happen. You're going to live your same life. So don't worry. It's the same day. You don't need to pay attention to your life anymore. And guess what? Now you get to entertain yourself. And you live under this illusion that tomorrow is the same as yesterday, which is bullshit. It's like living with a lover and expecting them to be the same every day.
Yep.
By thinking that, you make it true, but it's not true. Nothing is ever the same. But by relinquishing, we don't need to work. We don't need to pay attention anymore. They're stealing something from us under the guise of like, we're entertaining you. But they're taking our one greatest fucking resource and they're fracturing our attention and breaking up something that was never supposed to be quartered and halved. Multitasking is bullshit. I have ADHD. I know this.
Yep.
Multitasking is bullshit.
Yep.
Flitting around from thing to thing is fine.
Yep.
But multitasking is bullshit.
Absolutely.
Well, so as you can see, even though Mor is a talented artist, they're also a speaker, and you can tell just by listening to Mor on the podcast already. And
that's the stuff I love.
we spoke before the podcast, and you wanted me to bring up how you've been shifting more into the writing and speaking. So I would love to hear a little bit more about.
Well, for me, like, it's funny. I was actually reading Henry Miller, who I loved and forgot I loved. It's funny how you can kind of grow in and out of things and how things land differently at different times. But basically, with the writing and speaking, I've always had a notebook. I've always had a sketchbook. I've always written. It's funny now that I moved, so I can look through every single notebook I've ever had. And there's boxes and boxes and boxes. And the really crazy thing is I'm looking back at things I wrote at 17, and it's
We were wise.
the kernel. Yes.
We were wise.
It is the kernel.
We were nuts, but we were wise.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm having this really interesting experience now. And so with the writing and speaking, it's always been a parallel to my work. Like a word will come to me first. I've always been a thinker. I was dyslexic as a kid, so I couldn't read for a long time. I had a lot of learning disabilities. I had a lot of barriers between me and what I felt within myself. Like it was always like there was a babbling stream, even words I didn't know. Like there was always this kind of, but I grew up in a really traumatic environment. God bless them, grateful, but let's just be honest, it's very traumatic, very neglected. But also people do the best they can. And I think that's something I'm learning more. And
We know that.
It's also, I'm learning more that things that I was so angry about are actually gifts to me. And that's weird. But anyway, I always wrote, and it's kind of how I was able to move through the world. I always had this dialogue going, and I was always writing and writing and writing. And it's always kind of come along with my art. But the working of the mind has always kind of been the basis for everything I do. And it'll come through in form, it'll come through in image, but through making my work, I kind of figure out what's true. And then I feel like it's more and more my job to as succinctly say that as possible. But where I've always been able to find truth is through writing and speaking, because it allows me access to something which is so much smarter than I am because I'm so deeply flawed.
We talked about this on the podcast before. The question that we premised this episode with was, why are artists making art? Like, what is it that's different about us? And I think the conclusion that you came to is very related to this, which was it's this barrier of expression. There's a lot inside. It needs to come outside. And for whatever reason, we don't feel like we have the same tools as everyone else does to fit in or to express. So what happens is you make a creation.
I think
I have a
you
lot
said
to say about that.
this came up. I think it was like episode 2. We talked about this of our podcast, which was like at this point months ago, and I'm being assaulted by the fact that it's
Congratulations, by the way. That's really cool. Thanks. Seriously, that's awesome.
I said this like as a child, you are creating things because you don't have, and you just said this, that you don't even have the vocabulary. You have this babbling stream of thought that you don't have even vocabulary for. So you try to articulate it with whatever tools you have, whether that be how you draw something on a piece of paper.
One could argue that that's actually the basis of language.
Yeah, expression and form is absolutely the base of language.
When you're in the nameless place is true to the core of what things are.
Yeah.
Language is amazing. The fact that we can, as this Irish poet I love.
We made it up though.
Yes, and we agreed upon it. It's really amazing
right.
that he says, it's so amazing that we can reach across this chasm and say anything that lands to the other. And of course, there's going to be so much variation, like what I hear and what I say.
Yeah, it doesn't actually land.
But the really interesting thing is, man, I could go into so many different things. Oliver Sacks is somebody else I could talk about, but that our understanding of what we're saying is partially language, but it's also emotion and it's also energy. Yeah. And we communicate through a synthesis of the actual words, but also what we're actually saying. If somebody's lying to you, you can feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's funny that it's funny or makes sense that as children, we're operating out of this place, which is, we don't yet have the language, which both cloaks things and also expresses things. So we're kind of at the core of it, and it's rooted in like play, and you kind of don't know what you're doing, which is the beginner's mind, which is the place you're always trying to get back to.
Yeah. I think we've also brought this up on the podcast, and this is from a different podcast as well, Herbie House.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Where wonderful podcast, 2 musician types, or 1 producer, 1 musician type. They're both musicians. Why am I even saying that? There is a thought exercise of think back to what you enjoy doing and what you felt needed to be done when you were 8. And you probably actually knew what you were.
Do that.
Yeah, do that.
Do that.
Yeah.
I'm still doing it.
Because you were that much closer to that like universal unknown that you over the course of your life just build more systems around keeping yourself further and further from it for sake of being able to know what's going on.
Or not know and be okay with it.
And it's a great answer to this question that you asked before about like, well, it wasn't really a question. It's like, so the answer is we're all artists. But if you have the question of like, well, am I this creative type? Do I have passions? Am I an artist? If you're listening to the podcast and you're like, I don't know if this applies to me, what were you doing when you were 8? That's the answer to that question. You were creating something, or you had a passion in your life. Repeat.
I say this really often, and I think it's really true. I don't give a shit about interesting people. I give a shit about interested people. I like people.
Oh my God, when someone's passionate,
who are interested
there's
in
nothing sexier.
Anything. I don't care, dude. Once again,
so
cooking,
sexy.
making sandwiches, also just living your life. If you're somebody who's just really engaging with life, who's just really interested, somebody who loves to help, whatever you do, you're raising children, you're making art, I don't care. If you are humble to the endeavor of life, enough to actually understand that there's lessons everywhere. I don't care what you do, and what you do doesn't matter. I like people who are interested in being alive. And I have no patience for people who
Seeing their
somehow are
aliveness,
not,
too.
somehow aren't interested in being here or think that they have all the answers. Like, why would you waste a life thinking that you know what it is?
It's hard. But when people demonstrate their aliveness by talking to you about what it is that they
That's a great way to put that. I love demonstrate their aliveness.
That's-
what a good way to put that. I really love that.
There's like the concept of I'm autistic. And there's the concept.
I might be a little bit.
Like, I'm not going to say everyone's a little bit, but like realistically, no one's.
They call it a spectrum for a reason.
What the fuck is.
There's a way wider spectrum than we're aware of.
Absolutely.
And we don't call a lot of masks.
Oh,
but a lot of us mask in very different ways.
Oh, yeah. But there's also the concept of like hyperfixation or what is your like special interest.
That right there, baby.
Yeah. But like.
It's shapes. I love
Are
shapes.
you telling me there's people that don't have a special interest? Which in my experience, yes, I've met people who don't have a special interest. But like, I don't think it takes you being divergent in some way to have a special interest in just like to be obsessive and actually like care about the way you articulate yourself to the world and how you carry yourself on this fucking floating rock that we found ourselves on.
But
I don't
if
know
it's
why
trains,
you shouldn't care.
Check yourself. Just kidding.
Oh my goodness.
No, trains are great. Trains are awesome. I think that
Other soundbite for this.
we like trains.
I think it
I'm
depends
cool
on the
with
type
trains.
of train though. Is it like steam or coal powered?
Definitely
say
not
once-
MTA.
Which one are we? Oh,
When you start getting
MTA.
into train territory, I feel like there's going to be a really divisive line, and you're either going to gain a lot of followers or lose a lot.
Divisive art crit. Fuck coal powered trains.
Ruh-roh. You're like, yeah, we just lost like 200 followers. I don't know.
Apparently, we had coal-powered train lovers who listened to Practically
How
Happy.
do they know where we live? I will say you got to be careful. You got to be careful with interested people because they hyperfixate,
Ferocious.
my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. You say something I don't like about Oliver Sacks,
Ooh.
we're out, dude. But I did have something to say about what is it that makes us things that we do as children. And God, I'm telling you, John O'Donohue, for anybody who likes poetry or loves poetry and just wants to pick something up that will honestly embetter their lives, John O'Donohue. Just look him up, listen to him speak, read some of his works. He was just one of those splendid souls on earth for the time that he was here. But he says, we are all essentially ex-babies. Ex-babies?
Ex-babies.
That we were all once children. And
Fuck
when
the X-Men.
yeah,
Ex-babies.
we all were once babies. We were all essentially ex-babies. And as children, we were all once children. And as children, we live in these imaginal worlds. And what does he say that, when you're a little kid and they say, don't go over the wall, there's monsters over the wall. Oh my God, the things that you would create. And that we were in touch with our imaginal capacity as children. Mm-hmm. And that at our core, the first self, I like to think of it as like Matryoshka dolls, is the child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All of us have that. We become separated or we start to overprotect.
Layer.
We start to overprotect that child
Yeah.
because maybe that kid was neglected and we had to do a lot of things for that kid to be safe. And so we ignore them and then they become more toxic and more toxic and more toxic until we go in and we do the work and we start learning to care for ourselves. But the other thing I was thinking about is that, especially with neurodivergence, having brains that operate a little differently, I'm super dyslexic. I have crazy ADHD, but I didn't have language for it. I just knew I had to do all these things all the time. And
Yeah.
the emotional dysregulation of it is really tough. I have CPTSD. I also have PMDD, which nobody talks about and is fucking crippling, but we don't talk about it because it happens to women and people with ovaries. But I had all these barriers to be able to exist in the world. Like there were so many things I didn't have. There were so many seemingly normal things. Like I didn't have order. There was so much chaos around me. So when you're raised in that way, where something really essential is missing, I think you find something that makes sense. You find some closed system that you can close a door and spin a world from. And I think it's the reason why, you can kind of have this virtuoso tendency. You find a system that works to patch what is missing in your own. But the thing that happens, which can be a danger or a blessing, is it's almost this like cyborg-like synthesis where the two become kind of enmeshed. Like me and my need to make art are very mixed together because it's through my art that I learned how to emotionally regulate. It's through my art that I learned how to move through the world. And the upside of that is you're deeply in tune with it and you can make some amazing stuff. But the lesson I had to learn which took me a very long time and my God, was a brutal lesson, was that I'm not the things that I create though. And I can't use art like a drug. It's wonderful to have, but I finally got to a place in life where I could start to patch what art was patching in my system.
As I get more into mindfulness, this question comes up a lot in my mind because I realize that art for me, while it seems like this very healthy outlet, is somewhat like just the zoning out thing that I do with everything else. Yeah, it's like
dissociation.
I'm jumping into a fantasy world here. I'm not present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's something I've learned.
So I still need to take the time separately to be present.
And
I want to keep, and there's so many stories, and I'm sure you guys know some of them about like Frida Kahlo and Matisse are big ones where they had like crippling, severe, bedridden
oh my God,
in their
Frida
life
Kahlo is in so much pain
and had to keep making.
She was absolutely, I mean, she was in a bus accident where the shrapnel pierced through her body. That's why she had so much. That's why she couldn't conceive, and she had so much trouble. She had literally been like filleted.
And they both went while bedridden, had these elaborate setups made so that
of course
they
she'd
could
be there in the
continue.
bodice painting on the
Yeah,
ceiling.
so that they could continue to create art in this state. Because like, how do you take that away from someone who's suffering? That's what they need to.
I call it alchemy for the unbearable. That's what art is. It's alchemy for the unbearable. How do I take something? And I think that's that. Going back to that first thing that we learn, especially when you are not taught about emotional regulation, especially when you're taught that how you feel is not okay, and you have really big feelings, and you're not taught how to manage them. You're just taught that it's not acceptable. That energy needs somewhere to go. It needs somewhere to go. Yep. And if you're not into sports or you don't have these other kind of obvious things, you need somewhere for it to go. And so what I've found about art, and I think this is true, is that you take something that is so caustic, so unimaginable, so intense for your body, and somehow you can kind of take it into like the furnace of yourself, and you can kind of boil it down, and you can kind of sieve out those really sticky, caustic parts. And through that process, you can reform it into something that might even be beautiful. And then you can take it back in or give it to others. And so in a way, you kind of, through kind of a Rube Goldberg method, are able to create...
I love that. I love that. The body is a Rube Goldberg.
You're able to create essentially an ability to take something in, to break it down, to move it through your system. And the thing we have to learn as artists eventually is how to do that with our emotions without using art. It's wonderful to do art. It's wonderful to have these tools. I could never not make art. But what I had to learn...
It's not the answer.
I needed to learn that alchemical process, not just through art. I needed to learn actually how to exist in the moment and to feel my feelings. And I needed to really like learn how to do the stuff that, thank God I had art to patch my system. But as I'm moving through life, I'm realizing that like more is required of me, you know?
So relatable.
Dude.
In my own craft, at the very least, it feels less of a trying to take out the caustic parts of my experience, and
you got to melt them down, use them as fuel, or at least for me.
It's not even a fuel aspect. I guess there's a lot of my art that...
also, would you tell me what your art is like? I don't know your work specifically.
I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of like sound collage.
Ooh, cool.
I'm currently moving into like... I took a hiatus from that as an engineer for a very long time, as like a cool. Recording and mixing engineer. But I've recently been moving back into like writing poetry and making ambient things to like do poetry over.
Ooh, I like the synthesis of those two things. That's cool to bring those two together.
It's something that I put down for a very long time, and then actually, like, me and my partner are currently moving. And in digging through our stuff, I also found a very old notebook of mine.
So interesting, right? How you know so ahead of time.
Yeah, and like my project that I've had for forever, Faraday Temperaments. I found like some of the first writing I ever did for it, and never actually like committed to a work that I get released. And I'm reading just like, oh, some of this is actually like really good. But I feel like what I did then and do now with a lot better tact is I'm not even using it to reduce out what caustic elements are there, but better understand the caustic elements in a more tasteful sense.
I'm not avoiding shit anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not avoiding shit anymore. I think, you know, it's funny you say that, because I actually feel like I did something similar with my own writing. I think I was always trying to be like, I always had to exert so much force. So I had to make it beautiful. And I think I got maybe a little obsessed with that alchemical process. I have to make something beautiful out of this. I have to make something that makes sense. And I had a couple of realizations recently. And I realized, because that can turn into me for OCD. and being like, I got to do this, I got to do that. The cool thing is I'm like, ooh, birds, what do they mean? But sometimes I can be like, birds, what do they mean? You know? And I have to stop that thing in myself, because it can be, oh, I do these nonsensical things to try to figure out what's going to happen, because the earliest years of my life actually made no sense. There was no rhyme or reason. People are in pain. Trauma happens. Life happens. There's no why. It wasn't on purpose. The great tragedy of this life is that we hurt people without meaning. But as we grow and understand ourselves more, we can understand how we hurt others, and then we can heal ourselves, and inevitably it heals other people. The other thing I realized recently is, and it'll sound big because for me it was big, it was like, I thought I was going to break the wheel of suffering by saving everybody else. I thought that I was going to break the wheel of generational suffering by saving everybody, and I thought that it was my duty. I joke with a friend of mine who is a wonderful painter named Audrey Ryan, who I'm going to give a shout out to. She's doing tattoos right now, and she's just an absolute badass. Her work is amazing, and her tattoos are great. People should get tattooed by her. But we talk about coming from these families with like a lot of shit that happened, and how like you kind of pickle in the brine of it, but we're the first pickle who got out. So we have all of the kind of gifts of that darkness, but we are the first ones to be able to get out and kind of start healing ourselves. Yeah. And so I thought that I would break the wheel of suffering by saving others. But I have come to realize that I break the wheel of suffering by saving myself. But the understandings that my body learned in childhood was that I had to put everybody before myself. And that was the thing, that was the great gift I had to unlearn, was to figure out that actually in saving myself, I save other people. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was sitting in my velvet chair like 2 nights ago, like, oh my God.
I found it out.
Seriously.
I figured it out.
But that's how life is amazing sometimes, because you're just like, holy crap, you know? And it's not me, it's life. I'm just paying attention.
You know what's crazy? This might be totally tangential, and please stop
me. I love tangents. It's like I love them.
I could be on a bad track here in terms of like
go on the track.
No good and bad. Binaries are bullshit.
I love track. But go down this track.
I'm going to use a binary here, so I apologize. I don't know if this is true, but this is from my experience with the women I know, and some of the men I know as well. Okay, so the desire to reproduce and have children, I think, is more prevalent in people who are still in the pickle jar.
Yeah.
And in other words, if you
they're like, let's fix it. Can we have a go so I can fix it this time?
If you have left the pickle jar and you've healed yourself, you may be less likely to want to reproduce. I find that in some of the women and men that I know that are healed, they don't necessarily want to make more.
I'm a person who is very aware that I'm never having children.
Right.
Partially because I had the great gift of helping raise a child from a young age. And I'm so grateful I got the gift to do that, because I'm so proud of him. If I'm 31, he just turned 21, which is amazing. And he's a wonderful human being. And I got the privilege to watch him grow. I got that fucking privilege. And his mom also kind of became a mother to me. I mean, not kind of, she really did. And we all kind of saved each other when we became a family. And I'm so grateful for that. And because I had that experience of really being responsible for a life, knowing that, if a car comes, I'm jumping in front of that shit. I know that. I know that about myself. And I know that like now where I'm at, I want to live my life. I don't want to give my life to somebody else, because I know I'm going to resent that and regret it. But I also know what it takes just by being adjacent to the life of a child, because I made mistakes. I was a teenager, and I was also one of his primary caregivers. So I know I fucked shit up and also did some things right. But to get older and like look at him, who's such a wonderful individual, and I learn so much from him every day, and be like, you also helped me grow, because I was a kid and you were a kid. But there were some ways that you probably learned how to be, because you had to learn how to kind of be with me. And some of those were good and some of those are bad. But I know the truth of that. And I know that anybody who's like, I'd be a great parent, you have no fucking idea.
Right.
You don't know. You really don't know.
And I think this is this thing that the universe does, where even in our own lives on a micro level and on a macro level, the lesson will be repeated until it is learned. So my new theory, I guess, listening to this portion of the podcast is that if you have learned your lessons, you don't feel the need.
That might be the place, but I also say it might be the place where some people need to learn their lessons. And something also I'm realizing recently, like a lot of the things that are coming through for me, which are kind of synthesizing after a really long time of being like, oh, that seems to fit, that seems to fit, that seems to fit, is that things that are true kind of apply to everything. And one of them is anything I feel like I need to do, I kind of have to look at that because I don't need to do anything. Mm-hmm. I now do things because I want to do things. And I realized this is part of what I was writing today. And it was so funny because I wrote it all out and I was like, I understand everything now. And then the page blew away and I was like, all right.
Maybe I don't.
Well, actually, no. What I realized when the page blew away, I literally finished writing this thing and I was like, oh my God, that is the best thing I ever had the privilege to write. Holy crap. It says everything. It takes this whole period of coming apart of my life and it synthesizes it into a way that I can express to others. I'm gonna have a cigarette. And then of course it blows away. And I was like, okay, all right. Cause you're like that. You're all like free love, everything's cool now, but are you really? How do you feel when I take away this thing? You say that you're no longer attached to having to be the artist and the writer and that it's all about the doing. How do you feel when I take the last page of your essay away? Mm-hmm. How do you feel? And I laughed and I went, you're fucking hilarious. You're hilarious.
Yeah.
You are hilarious. I'm going to finish my cigarette and we'll see if it turns up. And if not, grateful for the gift. And it blew into the neighbor's backyard right where the wind actually wouldn't touch it. So once I was able to relinquish the fact that I'd ever get it back and do it for the sake of doing it, I actually will probably get it back. But that's very tangential. But what I was going to say in that was that what I realized is this needing to do, right? People being like, oh, I'm driven. I need to. Mm-hmm. I realized that there's a couple addictions that are obvious, like alcoholism or drugs or sex, because they're very obvious. But truthfully, there are many addictions and we all have a couple.
Yeah.
And what I have come to realize is before I had this great kind of awakening, honestly. Like I went through a really long dark night of the soul and I didn't think I'd ever come out of it. I never thought I'd make art again. I really thought my life was over. And then right when I was like, wow, this has to end or I don't know what's going to happen, I broke my ankle in 3 places. And
Big
that
transition.
was my greatest teacher. And I never thought I'd be able to be thankful for that chapter of my life. But what I realized is I used everything like drugs. I used memories like drugs. I used art like drugs. I used experiences like drugs. I used people like drugs. I used everything to help me make me feel the way that I thought that I should feel.
Yeah.
Because I was so unpresent that I had to use everything, but I got so good at it and it wasn't obviously hurting anybody. So it didn't seem like an addiction. But now I recognize that I do things because I want to. And I'm with people because I want to be with people. And I really used to need things from them. But I could be charming and I make nice art. And like, I just developed this personality and I finally did stuff good enough that I thought I deserved my own love and the love of others. But once I got knocked down and I couldn't take care of myself or make art anymore, I couldn't literally do all these things, I started hating myself. So I realized that I used everything like a drug. And I'm learning not to do that. And going back to this idea of need, I realized that this feeling of need, because I need you to give me, real love is gentle. It is patient. It is unconditional. If I love you, I love you to love you. And I will love you however you are willing to receive my love. And I will give it to you freely. And I will let myself love you the way that I like to love you, which is if I'll send you little notes or I read this book or whatever. And I don't need you to respond to me in a way that satiates me or makes me feel good about myself. I don't need that. I love you to love you. Love is freely given. And that is the mind-blowing shit that I've realized.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If I love you, dog.
So this is kind of getting really deep now.
It's the only way I know how to operate.
Cut this out if you want to. I told you a little bit about this recently. I had a ex reach out to me. This is some other universe thing. Like the stars made them reach out to me.
Everything and everybody is coming back into my life right now in kind of a beautiful way. But I really want to hear the story.
He reached out and he wanted me to apologize for certain things.
That's not how it works.
After like a very, very long time of no
very long
contact.
time.
That's not how that works?
No.
And I obviously felt victimized in this relationship. It was a heartbreaking situation. It was a high school relationship, so very messy on both sides.
I wouldn't be surprised that you felt victimized by somebody who's demanding an apology from you. That's not how that works.
So, I agree with you about love. By the way, I think it is not contingent. And so the part of me that still cares was like, well, if you need this to move on, I don't care. I can give it. I don't have to mean it. I can give it because you need it. So I gave it. And he did me the favor of explaining to me, because I told him afterwards that like what had hurt me the most is that like I loved you. I loved you. And he had said at some point that he did not love me anymore. And that's sort of what got
The anymore thing is funny, right? Anymore.
Right. So
What
that
was love to you that it was so fleeting?
But what he responded with was, well, I slowly lost respect for you.
Ew. Gross. Ew, you gross. That's gross.
That is.
Which is fine. He can lose respect for me.
Slimy.
But for me, that still
As a
didn't
high school
compute.
girl, what can a high school girl do to you to lose? Like, what are you
You lost
doing?
my respect. You haven't lived
Like
long
when
enough
you
to
decided
garner-
to bomb Syria, you lost my respect. You're a teenager. What could you possibly do that's that
I'm sure
bad,
I made
bro?
mistakes in relationships as did
As a
he.
teenager, bro. My God.
My point was
People
like
are
about
harsh.
this whole love situation where like that still didn't track for me, because even if I lost some respect for a person that I loved, I would talk to them about it. I wouldn't like just allow that to happen, but it would not affect my love for them. It's a separate thing for me.
I also reconnected with a previous partner recently, and we had this kind of like whirlwind. It was so beautiful, and it was at this point where like I was coming out of a place of so much pain and desolation, and I think it was the same for them. And we kind of found each other, and it was kind of like crazy and magical, and like our art, like you're making the same art that I'm making, and you're reading what I'm, and it was
yeah.
it was really gorgeous, and it was such a lovely experience, and I'll always be so grateful that I got to have that. And I have reconnected recently with this person, and I realized that when I broke up with them for a reason that I thought was really like, I was so right. I was so right. There were, of course, other things. We probably wouldn't have stayed together forever, but I realized that I thought that I was responding to something that they did, but I was actually reacting to something that they did. And in my protective reaction, I like broke that little thing of trust that was like, even if we do something to each other that we don't like we can still trust each other, and I'm still going to care about how you feel. And in my reactive needing to protect myself, like being like, oh, I have to take myself away from this because maybe you're going to hurt me. Like in my reactive protection, I actually ended up hurting this person.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the capacity to see that then, but I can see that now, because what I realized about trauma and life and all these things is there's reactivity and there's response. And responsibility, which is something nobody ever taught me because I was a little bit raised by wolves. So I didn't really know how to be responsible for stuff for myself. That what responsibility is your ability to respond. But guess what? You don't have the capacity to respond when you are so busy reacting to the world because you have a dysregulated nervous system, and you don't have the capacity to respond when you're really busy trying to avoid stuff that you know is going to trigger you and make you react. And they're two totally different things. And I realize now I finally have the capacity to be responsible, to be actually responsible and respond to a situation, partially because I don't need to protect myself from the world because I'm actually safe with myself now. If something's actually going to hurt me or is actually a problem, I'll fucking take care of it. But I didn't have that capacity before because I would bend over for people, so I had to be
Right.
overprotective.
In your defense, a little bit, what you're referring to reminds me strongly of a mother wound.
Oh.
So like the women in our lineage had to.
I had to be a wolf because I was like, I won't let you break me. I won't let you. You know.
Well, not only that, but women for generations have had to put up with men's behavior silently.
Oh yeah.
And so the reactions that women are giving now are often seen as the problem.
Oh, of course.
Not the men's behavior, because we didn't have a problem with it for generations. So
Oh,
why
no, of
should we
course.
suddenly be having a problem with it?
And it's also not to say all reaction is bad. And if you have a gut impulse, like that's not bad. Also going back, like I was always kind of proud of that of myself. I was like, yeah, that's right. Like I deserve better, or like I don't
Right.
like that.
I totally relate.
And that was really powerful for me to let myself feel, was to be like, I don't like that. Or like, I'm
Yes.
worth more than, like, it had to be very heightened because I was operating out of a place of wounding or deficit. But at the time, it was actually really powerful for me to be like, I don't need this or
I
you
won't
to be
stand for
happy.
it. Right.
And that was cool, but it was a reaction to things inside of myself. And it wasn't necessarily kind. I think it was a little cruel to this person. And I think that like now I have the capacity for that. And also I wouldn't change anything because I learned from that. And my life took a different course because I made those choices. And like, I think the thing that I've learned is like, I don't necessarily go back and I'm like, oh, I regret doing that. I'm like, no, now I understand that I acted out of protective reactivity. And that's a breach in kind of trust and care of somebody. Like we can break up, our relationship can change, but I want to be always so sturdy inside myself that I can really treat people with fierce dignity and gentleness. I want to be able to do that. And I'm not always going to have the capacity to, but I want to work on that inside of myself.
Yeah. No,
you
me
know?
too.
I digress.
I relate. You digress. I relate.
I don't know if that's
That's the
really
theme
a
of the
digression.
podcast.
You digress. I
Well,
relate.
that's a word I learned from bartending, digressing, because I am of course an artist because this is what I do. But the way that I've supported myself since I was 20 was tending bar. And I didn't learn. I mean, I didn't really go to school. I have a GED. Like, I didn't know anything about order or structure. But what taught me was bartending. I learned how to calm down my stress responses. I learned how to manage people. And I learned if somebody walks through the door and I have a bad feeling about them, I got to take care of that problem immediately as efficiently as possible. And you don't make a scene. I can't get aggressive because any dude could probably beat me up. Like it taught me so much that I didn't learn in my life. But one of the things that I totally lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? I was bartending.
Digression.
Digression. Yes, that's the word I learned from bartending. I sometimes have great conversations and then you're like, oh my God, I got to do this. I got to close that dude out. I got 3 credit cards in my hand. And you have to end the thought without wrapping it up. And you go, I digress. And then they giggle because you've said digress and you walk away. So that's how I learned the word digress when you're like, okay, I'm done with this thought. I have to put it down.
I like that.
If we see everything in this sort of like ADHD-ish lens that like there's
how my life looks.
there's no multitasking, there's just jumping around from thing to thing.
I call it footing.
Everything is a digression. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if you ever have to note it ever.
I
You
guess
just
that's
get more
true.
familiar with never noting, just like this isn't a digression. I'm just going to the next
I think it can be
thing.
helpful for communicating with people who don't have my brain because they'll be like, wait a minute, are we talking about something else? If I digress, I'm being like, okay, next thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't have all of the same beautiful, tragic, painful, gorgeous, sublime brains. We just don't.
Sublime.
You know, it is sublime.
Each one has their own.
Oh yeah.
And we have to learn how to do our best and heal it. Otherwise, we'll be at the mercy of it our whole fucking lives, man.
Or it'll have baby, and then baby will have same problem.
We'll be at the mercy of it for our whole fucking lives, man. Life is a trip.
That's a good title for this episode.
Life is a trip.
Life is a trip.
I'll
Life's a trip. And so I, as I was saying, I'm writing all the time. And I have this really beautiful gift in life right now. So I had this kind of horrendous injury. Also, the crazy thing is, so I learned how to ride a bike at 27. I was in New Orleans during the pandemic, which was a great gift. I'm so grateful I was there. I would have lost my mind if I was in New York. And New Orleans is a very pivotal and special place for me. So I was in New Orleans and one of my great friends, Nicolina, oh my God, who is here tomorrow. And I swear to God, I manifested her in New York because she was like, dude, I'm never coming back to New York. I go to visit her in New Orleans and I just moved into this place and I was imagining her in my house. And I was like, oh, we'd go to the Metropolitan Museum. And lo and behold, randomly, she had to come to New Jersey to see a partner's family. And tomorrow we're going to the Met.
Hell yeah.
I'm on some shit right now. But anyway, New Orleans, learned how to ride a bike at 27. I've had my elbow reconstructed because I hit a pothole. And I had this really traumatic injury.
Are you going to keep biking?
Oh, I'm biked here, dude.
I couldn't even
There you go.
remember that.
Oh, dude, I do 15 miles a day. Absolutely. No, I love it. I am beholden to it. I am one of those people who I might not come to something for a long time. Like I didn't learn how to read till I was in 2nd grade. But when I pick it up with a love and a passion because I've lived without it. I love my bike. I will continue to ride my bike. But all these bike accidents and the great gift now that I'm receiving after the most horrendous, most painful, most unimaginable chapter of my life that I really did not thought I would survive, and it's such a gift to be here, is that I have time and I have space and I'm living in this neighborhood kind of where my mom is from, and it's Brooklyn and I'm from Brooklyn, so it's bringing out the Brooklyn in me. So every night I'm going up to the pier where my dad's sculpture is and I'm just writing. I'm just writing and writing and writing in my notebook, and I'm sure this was going somewhere, but I'm also just grateful. It's so enjoyable to get to do that. Like, that's what I'm doing right now. And this was going somewhere, but my blood sugar is a little low, so I'm not sure where I was going to top it off at.
The sentiment is there.
Totally, dude.
Yeah.
It's just a gift.
We could take a snacky break.
Can we take a snack break?
We can, yeah.
Oh
Absolutely.
my God, I would love a snack break.
Snack break.
Hello.
Muffins have been
We've
eaten.
had grapes. We've had muffins.
The sugar
I've
has
toured
been
the
restored.
massive bathroom. It's very good.
Massive bathroom.
It's so large. You could maybe fit.
Massive.
You could probably fit like 2 people in there if both people stand up at the same time and don't.
no, you
sit.
could probably
And
fit a third in the shower.
They'd have to be in each other.
One person could be. Well, if we do that, maybe we could fit 3, babe.
Depends on the people.
There's a fetish for everything, so I just really like small New York spaces. Well, you've
It is
come to the
cute.
right place.
You've come to the
babe.
right place. Welcome
You've
to
come
New
the right
York.
place. But I digress. What we were talking about.
I've never thought of claustrophobia as a potential kink. Oh,
Oh,
God.
totally. Well, because it's.
Oh, whoa.
What do you think being like suited in latex and like that's all
I thought it
claustrophobia?
was a texture thing.
Well, it is texture, but if you're
Oh, God.
held in.
Do you think there's
I have a
someone
cocooning kink.
whose kink is latex, but they won't wear condoms because they don't?
Do you mean is there a dude in the world? Yes, there is a pain in the ass for everything. So yes.
Yeah.
So my
That
kink- my
dude
kink is a
or
condom.
person with a dick definitely exists. I'm happy that I got to have at least one dick joke because it's funny as I'm moving through time now. I feel like all these parts of myself, which are all very separate, and I think something we do as women, as neurodivergent people, as people with ADHD, whatever it is, you learn how to have like a lot of different masks. And it's I think one of the reasons I think I make masks now. I'm like, oh, that's so funny. You have a lot of different people you can be, and you get really good at being a chameleon. Like in my life, I had to learn like, okay, like this is how I make this person laugh. This is how I make this person laugh. And so I had like a lot of different selves. And like one of them is like very brassy and very Brooklyn, who I think is my true self. But recently it's coming out more and more. And I'm very happy that I got to make one dick joke because anybody who knows me really well, maybe not as an artist, but as a person knows that like I can make a dick joke to any person in any part of the social strata, in any situation, over any language barrier, and it will land. And it's one of those gifts of life that I got probably from working in restaurants for
It's
a long
honestly a
time.
pretty good merit.
Because you know what? Human beings have been sitting around the fire making dick jokes and fart jokes since we were prelingual.
Oh, yeah.
It's why it lands. It's fucking universal. So absolutely, you can that's such a good thing to have in your back pocket. And to be able to do it with tact is the. But I feel like we were on a good tangent before we picked up the microphones, and it was about art and it changing. Oh, purpose. We were talking about purpose.
yes.
And what were you saying about your purpose in art? I thought that was really cool.
Oh yeah, well I realized that what I thought was a very focused purpose and that it had to come out of me through art is actually something that I found recently. It can be accomplished through a variety of means.
Yep.
I don't actually need art. The thing that I've dedicated my life and skill set towards improving and becoming proficient at expressing through is not actually the thing that I need to do for my life. It's just it's a vessel that I could use.
It's mistaking the hammer for the hand and the person who wields it. You mistake the tool. And I think what you were also saying before we picked up the microphones was that like it's really hard after you've spent a really long time trying to become a very particular thing to feel like you have to give it up and be something else. Because it feels like a death. You're like, wait a minute, I'm going to give up all these years of hard work and whatever. And like, I know that feeling because I'm in a very similar point with my work. Like, because I come from nothing, because I am self-taught, I have a GED. Like, I had anything I ever got, any door I ever walked through was because somebody liked me. And I knew how to engage with people. And I took my craft so fucking seriously. Kind of to my own detriment, but it worked out because now I can cut things like the speed of the wind. But I became so meshed up and enmeshed with that thing that I did and that I was that and that my worth got tied up in it too. And when you've lived that way for a really long time, even if it has been damaging to you in a lot of ways, it's hard to give up because you're like, am I throwing away all those years of my life? But what I've realized is actually that's not true. Like I did that then. I did it 100%. I learned a lot of wonderful and brutal lessons from it. And I'll always have that. But just because I was that person and because I learned in that way, it doesn't mean I have to do that forever. In fact, it means I actually really get to change because I did the shit out of that and I'll always have it. Like I will always have that.
Yeah.
Nobody can take that from me.
The skills do not go away.
And to be afraid to relinquish and quote unquote give up on something just because you've been doing it for a long time, don't give up. Like find things that you love to do. Live your life. Don't be like, I suck and it didn't
And come
work
back
out.
to it when you love it.
Come back to it when you love it. I stopped making art. I had this super traumatic injury and I had all the time in the world, you know, and I had some very kind of intense negative voices being like, well, you're not even making art. You have all this time. Like, what are you doing? And I just was like, oh my God, I lost it. My sweet love, my sweet love that has always been here to save me. The alchemy. I lost the alchemy. And I literally wouldn't let myself write. It was like self-brutalization, wouldn't let myself draw because the perfectionism was getting real big. And so I stopped. And then when I started to get a little better and come out of it, I stopped giving a shit that I wasn't drawing. I stopped giving a shit that I wasn't writing.
You took the pressure off.
Took the pressure off. And now I've come back to it. And it's like a lover that I've known for 31 years, but I'm just meeting for the first time. Like I'm drawing and there's not resistance. It was always like face the fear, face the fear. But now I just draw and I'm like, whatever you're going to be, you're going to be. And it comes out. It's crazy. And so I'm realizing that as well, that actually when I gave that person up, it got way easier to do a lot of the things that they did. And it's important to let yourself change. It's hard to give shit up, but I don't think you realize how heavy that person is to carry around. And you're like, I gotta do it. And then you take it off and you're like, oh, it's kind of nice. It's kind of easier to get around. It's, it's kind of a load off, it's almost a relief. But I digress. You said you had an adversarial opinion on that.
I do have an adversarial thing. And it might seem like I'm playing... part of me feels like I could
got
be
things
playing...
about the devil. I'm down with the devil. What do you got?
I could be playing directly into that heavy person you're carrying around. But...
They were cool. I liked that person.
I would like to believe that I know myself to some degree thus far. To not be blowing smoke up my own ass.
It's hard to do, or actually, no, it's easy to do.
But I have, over the past 2 years, following some exacerbating circumstances with having like the respect for my ability being like kind of taken from me and having to remove myself from situations where I was practicing the thing that I do understand in my heart of hearts that I do love and want to commit my life to. But at the time having that misused and misappropriated.
Sometimes you have to leave places you don't want to, but you need to. It's hard.
And then for 2 years, there was a lot of doubt of my ability to even...
By yourself, like you felt that doubt or other people did?
I felt that doubt.
Oh, I know that's the...
And I'm still practicing day to day. I was still practicing day to day for 2 years. And for some reason, I could not convince myself that I knew what I was doing and that every decision that I was making was potentially the wrong decision. To the point where like a lot of, in ripping myself from that, a lot of financial issues have come forward, a lot of circumstances that I'm just like, it would be good to maybe for the moment give up my perception of myself as this like, though I'm a technical person, I'm an engineer at the end of the day. I'm a very technical artist if I want to call myself an artist, and I do. Maybe it would be best to not think of myself as an artist anymore and just do the expected thing for a moment to provide myself this space. And in attempting to do that and maybe this is too much to share of myself.
I would love to hear. I feel like I think we've all shared some vulnerable shit.
Bless my partner, but over the past couple months, there have been very dark nights where it's just hit me like a truck that just like, no, this is the thing. It almost makes me feel like a fucking child where it's just like, oh no, it would be so much easier if I had the capacity to give up this thing that I know I love. And that I know that when I'm doing it in good capacity for good people, I feel like it doesn't matter like that I'm a human being. I don't exactly love the fact that I am a flesh vessel. I don't like this. But it doesn't matter in those moments. And it would be so easy for me in those like crippling moments to be like, okay, I'm giving it up. I'm just going to go find some, this is legitimately like, I'm just going to get on my laptop and like apply for like a data entry job, something that's like brain dead and easy to do for me. Cause that's something that I know I can do easily. And literally like looking at this laptop for an hour straight and then having a full on breakdown. Cause it's just like, no.
It's the murder of the soul. It's the worst kind.
Abandonment really more than murder.
It's self-abandonment. And I have found, and like, I do think that like, it's a relief sometimes to pivot, because sometimes you really need to be like, okay, in order for me to keep doing this thing that I actually really love, I'm so stressed out about money, or I'm so stressed about these other things. I need to stop for a little bit so I can make sure my physiological needs are met. So then I have the spaciousness to do my art. Like, that's fine.
I forget who I talked about this with. It was very recently. I don't know if you were around for that. I'm completely blanking on who I was talking to. But we were talking about the Maslow's hierarchy, or
Yeah, absolutely. Physiological needs are at the bottom.
physiological needs, and like, which is like food, housing, and that. It's like
Spaciousness.
there has to be people that exist where like passion and craft is within that physiological need.
Well, plenty of people abandon their needs for their craft, which I find incredible, honestly.
I find it stupid. I mean, I've lived the detriment. I've lived the detriment. Like, the problems that I have in life are because I lived at the mercy of somebody else's. So I believe at its highest, art is a node to life. If it helps shift the way somebody views what's actually here and allows them to engage with it more, awesome. If it's something you love doing, great. But life should never be cut away at to make space for art. Like, art is always secondary. We need to do it, of course, but life is always more important.
And
you
yet
can save one kid by burning down a museum. You burn down that fucking museum, man.
My point is more like, you were talking about
That's
this
an intense
time.
way to say that, but don't burn down the museum.
This time period in your life that's like a gift to you because you're not working for money. You're
For right now.
and you have this time, even though it could be stressful to anyone to not be making a paycheck every day.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you have this
I'm
time to
working on
create.
commissions. Like, that's also the great gift of this time, is that, like, because I'm coming off of this injury, which has been ass, but also been really beautiful. I'm also like, I have like a commission from a friend that I'm working on. So it's like, I've been able to kind of scrape by, honestly, out of kind of like, I mean, just good luck and like the graces of people who care about me and who I care about. So no, I'm kind of getting taken care of by the universe right now.
Right. And you're able to prioritize craft.
Oh, totally.
Because of that.
Oh, totally. Because I don't have to work 4 days a week in a bar right now, which
Right.
has been my entire existence. But to what the point that you said about removing the idea of being an artist, I think that you can remove the idea of being an artist, like, I have to be the blah blah. Like, I carried that around.
I don't even want it to be seen as like,
That
I
thing
don't
is
even
heavy.
think of myself like that.
But I don't think we should ever think that we have to relinquish the knowing in our hearts that we are artists in our fucking souls.
Yeah.
And that it is our purpose on earth, and it is a word which we put around something that is fucking ineffable. We never have to give that up.
Yeah.
And I think when the soul speaks, when you can feel it in your body, you know what's true for you. And it might not make sense, and it might be kind of ridiculous, because if you look at it logically, blah, 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 blah. But I am learning some really interesting shit about how reality actually works. And as a person who was stuck maybe a little too often into the despair region and pain region, when you're operating in that way, it's very hard for life to come to you, because you're resisting. And especially chemically, if you're kind of born down there, you're always hypervigilant. You're always expecting the worst thing. You're living in the past. But what I've learned about pursuing, this is a really big thing I've learned actually, which I did want to talk about, was pursuing enjoyment. I never let myself enjoy things. I really thought I had to earn pleasure. I had to earn enjoyment. And enjoyment, I think, is you have to allow yourself to kind of be present and vulnerable enough to enjoy things. And I used to be like, okay, what's the right thing? I always believed that there were two tracks.
Right.
It was either I fulfill my like great kind of grand purpose that I'm always trying to make all these things and I feel these glimmers inside of myself and I know that there's something and I have to do it to the greatest and most blah, 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 blah. Or all the things I've been running away from my entire life and the person I'm afraid I'm going to be mentally ill, homeless, like all these things, like it's binary. It's these two. But I realized that there's actually no right choice. There's many choices. There's a plethora of choices. And it's about what experience I prefer to have and my sense of enjoyment. And in this really weird way, I'll literally be like, all right, like what would you dig to do more, like a little bit more? Like what would you want to? And as I do that, rather than try to think about what's the next choice or 10 years down, blah, 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 things keep coming into my realm. And I think that like when you move through life in that way, I think artists know about that. And I think that to what you were saying about feeling that thing inside yourself, you got to listen to that thing, dude, you know? And it's not in the way that other people think you have to make art, and it might not be in this way or that way. But when you feel really like called, like you just got to fucking listen to that shit, man. However you can. And sometimes it means moving somewhere where you can have a more simple life and get to live it the way you want.
That's exactly what I'm doing with my life.
And even to, like,
As
to
well.
that point, like the moment where one of these breakdowns kind of hit, and then I just realized, like, well, no, this thing isn't budging. It would be so much simpler if it did budge, and it doesn't budge. The moment I realized, like, okay, this is not going to budge, the next day an opportunity comes up to, like, practice it. I honestly think it was the morning or, like...
When you relinquish outcome,
Yeah.
crazy shit. I'm telling you, it was what I had that experience with the page today. I fucking swear to God, because I wrote the best thing I ever wrote. I was like, oh my God, I'm so grateful I got to write this. It flies away. And I'm like, okay, I relinquished ever getting this back. Okay, you know what? Fine. And then there's that fucking page, the one place to be safe. But I didn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
I got to have it.
I don't even remember what circumstances this happened, but I think one of these times where I was really struggling with like, I need to get over myself and just like feel what is told to me is that hierarchical.
Screw getting over
base.
yourself, right? You're like, I should
Yeah.
I should stop. Like, because when you say I should get over myself, you should be like, I shouldn't feel the way I feel. Okay. Why don't we figure out why I feel the way I feel? And then we'll see what part of this doesn't feel good when I need to fix. You know what I'm saying? Like this idea that like I shouldn't feel, fuck that. Who gives a shit how you feel? Feel the fucking how you feel. So much of my life I spent needing to feel differently. Anyway, I digress. Please continue.
I think it's important to note that I don't really feel like when I think of myself as my craft being engineering in a lot of ways, I don't really think of myself as an artist. What I love most about it is not the fact that I'm creating something. It's that I'm helping other people create something.
Right. And that is an art. You don't necessarily need the moniker, but it is, you are practicing and in the presence of and assisting in creation, therefore artist.
The element of helping someone channel and transmute like what they have in their head
That's amazing.
down on. The moment I realized like, no, this is kind of what I feel like I need to be doing with my life, at least for this moment. Then I think the next morning, I don't know why, I don't know who said I should do it. I think it was my partner. You were doing yoga in the park, and I just like, my partner just said like, yeah, you should just come to the park afterwards. And then you were there with Pants.
Is somebody
And that's the first
is somebody named Pants?
There's someone named Pants.
She was on the
Pony.
podcast.
Pants Pony, guest on the podcast, will be a guest again, most likely. I met Pants there and we began talking, and now there's like greater studio plans like bubbling under the surface.
This is exactly, but you know why? Because rather than sit at home and try to make a special piece of art and figure out what you needed to do, you went and you lived in the world.
Yeah.
Because artists exist in the world. Yeah. Art belongs to the people and should meet them where they are. I was saying before, as we were having our snack break, that I had a wonderful conversation with this person I met at the pier, who I'll call a kid. I mean, he's 22, but to me, he's a kid because I'm 10 years older than him. We just had this amazing conversation. You know, he's like 22 years old, first generation Chinese. Parents met here when he was 16. They were both from actually somewhat close villages in China, but didn't meet until they came here. How amazing is that, right? And they met here. They've got a house in Bensonhurst. He's going away to basic training in Georgia, and we were talking about that. And like just all the things that need to transpire to bring two people to a bench. You know, my family, Holocaust survivors. If not for the Holocaust, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
If my whole family hadn't been exterminated.
We'd all be German.
Yes, in a way. All of the things that need to transpire to make anything happen is such art. And if you sit at home in your little studio and try to make the best, most awesome thing ever, it's like such a fuck you to life, which is why we make art any way. And I found the same thing, that like when I'm trying to pull beauty out of my single self, like it's not working. And like, guess what? Guess what? You don't have to. Like there's a whole world out there. But when I'll just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna go like to the park. I'm just gonna take a walk. I'm just gonna go to the coffee shop. I'll run into somebody. And then from that, when you're in the flow of life, when you are out here engaging and with people, that's the thing. Isolation's bullshit. Solitude is necessary, but isolation is bullshit. When you go out in the world, what you need comes to you.
Yeah.
It just fucking does. Life, dog. It's a fucking trip.
Life, dog.
DAWG.
The word that came to me on the pier that I wrote right before I was talking to, I think his name was Jeff. maybe we'll be friends. I want to give him books now. I'm like, I want to give this kid books. It was Broken Splendor. And I always had this idea for maybe a collection of stories I'd put together, which would be Alchemy for the Unbearable. And I was thinking about today and I was like, so abrasive. Like alchemy is not necessarily a good thing. It's intense. And then unbearable. Who wants an unbearable thing? But I was like, oh, it's Broken Splendor, because I have become strong in all of the places where I was absolutely broken.
Yeah.
And the things that I ran from, I was sitting under the almost full moon last night in the backyard of this place that I'm staying, which is really beautiful. And I'm so grateful I get to take care of this house. After having this wonderful conversation, and I'm sitting and I'm just like smoking a cigarette, which God damn it, I'm enjoying it. And I'm looking at the moon and I was like, every time that I have that little fear impulse or that little OCD thing, which usually, I'll be like, okay, let me breathe and let it go. I'm like, no, you get to stay. And I talk to it every time, because it used to be like, okay, no, you're having an OCD thought, or like, I will literally say out loud, stay. Yeah. I want you to stay. I don't need you to be different. I'd like you to stay here with me. I'd really love for you to stay. I want you to get to see this. Like, I don't need you to go. I spent my whole life running away from you. I spent my whole life thinking that you were the problem. But I realize, and this is what I realized last night, it's giving me chills because it's such a realization. I was like, you were my greatest teacher. You, who I spent my whole life in opposition to, in spite of, to not be destroyed or devoured by, you were my greatest teacher. Yeah. That darkness and that pain and that suffering, which isn't even just mine. It's my mother's and my father's and all the trauma and all the different kinds of traumas, everything that I have like in my cells and everything I've experienced. Like, my job was to be befriended by you. But I spent my whole life in opposition, and I really had this moment sitting where it all kind of came together, and I was like, wow, holy shit. Like, what a gift to get to know that about literally even just the little transgressions inside of my mind that I spent my whole life trying to massage or knead out or paint over, that the things that broke me were my greatest gift in life. And I'm strongest in those places that I never imagined I could be. But so I think the title for the work will be Broken Splendor.
I can't wait. I mean, I literally can't wait. I'm
just so grateful I got to share this today, because I don't think I had it together until today. And it's so funny that your audio equipment didn't work yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's like lots of like beautiful little
this.
layers, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful that I got to have this experience. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for both inviting me here. And I'm also really happy
for coming.
that it didn't
Thank
work
you for
out the
reaching
first
out.
time. I'm really happy it didn't work out the first time,
Yeah.
because I was still in the throes of my dark night of the soul, and it's kind of perfect timing. So thank you for doing what you do. It takes so much courage to put together a creative endeavor, especially for two people to come together and do that. So thank you for the work that you do. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
We're not fully
Thank you.
done.
Oh, I know. I just wanted to make sure that I told you.
Before we get to the tarot portion, because I know some of our listeners like to drop off during that portion, I want to make sure we get to where can we
Goodbye.
find you? Where can we find you?
So
We'll put links below, but
you can find me in Sunset Park biking around. I mean, you can.
Hey, pretty solid.
If you see a very happy woman with raging red hair who's blasting Ozzy Osbourne, maybe in like a blue slip dress on her bike, it's probably me. So I mostly Instagram. I found that when I was like, laid up with my injury and super depressed, like I was using Instagram in the worst way, but I've kind of found a way to actually make it kind of generative recently, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I've been posting more kind of spoken word stuff that seems to be kind of landing. So follow me on Instagram. My moniker is Mor Stencil Art, so just MOR and then stencil art, because that's how I came up. And then also my website. I don't have a show or anything right on the horizon, but if you want to see some of my older work, you can go morstencilart.com, just MOR. I've got some of my talks and stuff on there, but mostly, Instagram. And what I'm doing right now is just focusing on my writing and enjoying my work. And one thing I'm really excited about getting to do right now. So I do these masks and headdresses and wearables, and I've always loved it. Like I grew up in like the rock and roll culture here, like stitching together my vests and sewing together my brother's vests with dental floss in exchange for beer and stuff. And I've always kind of had this kind of rock and roll thing going on. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking the kind of costume wearable stuff that I love, and I'm synthesizing that into like wearable stuff, like leather jackets and slip dresses. I didn't get to tell the story about it, but it's actually this blue dress kind of changed my life. It was this one beautiful thing that I allowed myself at this kind of dark point in life. And when I put it on, I was like, oh, like life can be like a light garment. Like things can be soft. Like I can wear this, and I never let myself have that femininity because I grew up in this really rough culture. And so right now I'm doing painted silk dresses and like clothing and stuff. So yeah, keep an eye out and like follow me on Instagram because that's where I'm putting my stuff.
Shall we move to the tarot portion?
The tarot portion.
Let's do it. Ooh, this is
Tarot
I have a thing with tarot. I had to put my cards away because during my dark night of the soul, I would just draw them incessantly, and I would just get the devil again and again and again and again and again and again and again.
That's me with, you see on the back of the laptop, I have the tower.
I know. I'm in the
Tower's my card that continuously comes up.
I was in that phase, and I'm actually, some of the work I'm doing right now is based off of the devil and the tower, because what I realized with the devil is actually there to set you free, because it's you. It's everything you do to yourself. And the first thing I drew when I came out of this was the devil mask. And so that's the first in the series. So I'm 100% on that shit right now.
Well, let's see if the devil comes up in this tarot reading. Let's take a little break and set up for it.
We're acquainted now.
Intentions. What would you want to have divulged from these cards?
Honestly, I don't. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You just want to hear some shit.
So I was in this phase when I was at my kind of darkest, where I was like pulling cards all the time. And I like needed to know the future, yet I wasn't kind of taking part in it. And where I'm at now is like, I've really relinquished my need. Like I'm willing to be like, what do you have to tell me? What's going on in the world today? Like I used to really feel this like, what's it going to be? And now I'm kind of like, whatever you want to tell me is cool, man. So whatever you want to tell me is cool, man.
All right. So I think I'm going to allow you to split this deck as much as you need.
Okay, cool. Okay,
all right. So
those are cool cards too, by the way. I really like those.
Yeah, they're the universal weight. They're just like tiny, and I like them. I call it my bitch deck.
It throws hands.
Because I have several other decks, and this one likes to slap me across the face every time I use it.
Ooh.
So
I like
it's very much of the aggressive, benevolent figure. It is going to tell me what I need to know in the moment, and I would hope it would do the same.
She a brassy Brooklyn deck.
Well, she has just found her match.
So I would like you to pull 3 cards toward you.
Oh man, I haven't done tarot in a long time. I've been avoiding it, so this will be interesting. Ooh.
So
Lovers reversed.
The reading thus far. The 3 cards are Lovers reversed, the 5 of Wands, and the 3 of Pentacles.
Okay.
For the shadow of the reading, what was got was the 7 of what was got was the 7 of Swords, and then my own signifier, which I always pull and let fly out, was the 9 of Cups. I think it could be good to start with the shadow and then see what detail can come out of the 3-card reading.
Oh, me and the shadow are down. We're friends now, man.
So your shadow being the 7 of Swords, what is depicted on the card is, I would like to say it's a young-ish figure
Who's struggling
to
carrying
hold,
too many things.
carrying too many things, leaving
You with your
some
paper
behind.
cutouts.
He's carrying too many things, dog. He's got to put some of those things down.
He is overburdened by his own obligations to the point where he's not even fully fulfilling them.
Yeah, he's doing too much shit. You got to do one.
Is putting himself out there. A fun bit of reading I've had about this card is his attempt is to usurp an enemy by taking their form of defense and taking their form of weaponry.
Okay.
But in doing so, they are going beyond lines to maybe in the moment diminish one's power, but not doing so completely as to then prepare yourself and be like, I am safe now. I have done what I can do.
Oh, he's screwing himself.
He's screwing himself over a little bit. He's making himself believe that he has covered all of his bases. However, in the task he's taken on, he has not been able to complete it to a useful degree in which to it's going to bite you in the ass.
Yeah, that's what happens when you try to do too many things.
What can be taken from this card is, as it's been said earlier on in this episode, is just multitasking means literally nothing.
Nope, you got to flit, dog. You got to flit around like a moth. You can't. That has been my crux in a lot of ways in the past. Is I was not honest with myself about how I actually worked.
Yeah,
and I tried to operate how I thought I should operate.
Yeah, that's very.
And I always had all these. Oh, but I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this. And I wasn't honest about how much energy my life was taking and how much I actually had. But then I was weighing my worth about how good I could do all of these things, which was kind of destined for failure. Yeah. And then you look like somebody who doesn't care, but it's actually, I care so much that I'm trying to do so
much
many
that
things.
I've actually just like fallen off.
Because I'm trying to do this for you, and I'm trying to do this for you, and I'm trying to do this for you. And it's like, it's hard sometimes. Like as I'm getting older, I'm also realizing like I can do a lot less than I thought I could. Yeah. But if I know that, I can do a couple things way better than I probably could have in the past, because I could be realistic about where I'm at. Self-honesty, my friend.
And I think the Seven of Swords warns just against picking one complete enemy, one ultimate evil, and then trying to just address an ultimate evil. Rather, just focus on making what you can better as you can do it. And also that it's okay that if you do have one ultimate evil, that it is okay to, not do it alone or like completely under the guise of other people who might be maybe not relying on you, but wanting to experience like this cosmic journey through your lifetime with you.
I think I'm like vanquishing some shit right now with some other people. Yeah. I do feel post eclipse though, just because we were talking about astrology and stuff, that like I felt that shit super hard.
This was just a reference for the podcast because we don't know when this is coming out exactly. But
it's coming out a bit later than the
lunar eclipse in Pisces.
Lunar eclipse in Pisces, and there was a solar eclipse that everybody went out to go watch before that. But when it happened, I was like vibrating. Yep. It was the crack. I mean, there was a crack coming for a long time, but I felt it that day. Yep. It opened up some stuff, and all the stuff that it opened up is that shadow stuff. Like it was like not taking care of myself, like not eating properly, lots of negative. And I and the crazy thing was literally just with this eclipse, like everything is different now. But it's only because I went and did that crazy shadow work. So anyway, I digress. But moon's beyond some shit.
So then your 3-card reading is Lovers Reversed, 5 of Wands, and the 3 of Pentacles. Mm-hmm. Lovers Reversed, I think, speaks a lot to the having some affection for what you're doing that is not fully serving you, even if it's like something that you believe is truly part of your being, and you've talked about this. Honestly, I feel like this reading is mostly just affirming what you've talked about so far on the podcast.
Cool.
So great. Cool.
That feels good. I like to be affirmed. I'm trying to give up on that one, but I love to be affirmed.
And part of me could also feel called out about my previous statements, and just like I found the thing that I love, and despite it being a little parasitic to my hierarchical base, the Lovers Reversed would call out anything that is taking up too much time and
maybe something that is giving the illusion of giving us a lot, but actually in a lot of ways taking away from us our ability to really like enjoy and do things. Yeah. Like we do art because we love it, right? But then if it's making us miserable, then like I really feel this about art. And recently, like, and it's somewhat tangential, I'll make it short, but that like I realized that I thought, and this is what we were saying about purpose, is I thought my purpose was to do that. I thought my purpose was to be like super good at drawing and like make like really technically proficient art. But I realized actually, and I partially did that because I was like, if I'm really good, undeniably good as a self-made person, I can buy my time back to use how I want. And I was able to do that. So that's a decent thing. But I thought my purpose was to make really technically proficient shit. Yep. It's not. My purpose is to learn from the process of making art, and to learn from the endeavor of being a human being, and to live in a way that I get to truly live my time, and to be as generous as possible and interested as possible, and then offer up as succinctly as I can those gifts. Like that's my job.
So I feel like I don't even need to explain the 5 of Wands and the 3 of Pentacles.
What do you got, dog?
Because that is essentially that. The 5 of Wands is, it depicts a bunch of childlike figures fighting each other with big old sticks with wands. Nice. And the ethos of the card is the ethos of play, the ethos of experiencing the
sick.
Like they are depicted in battle, but they're realistically playing with one another. They're not trying to be victorious in what they're doing. They're simply experiencing each other and how each other plays, and further learning from experience. And then the 3 of Pentacles beyond that is of a great craftsman, like showing off their work and the detailings of their work. Like so that. In that same way, you are learning from experience in order to make something better of yourself.
Dude, that is so spot on. That's literally what I'm doing right now. I literally
sounds very much like
the theme that I have learned. Like the theme that I have learned is I am so much less interested in what things say about me than their experience.
Yeah.
I'm interested in their experience. Nothing says jack shit about me. Nobody is paying attention. People are like, what kind of person are you? The things you do, they don't say what kind of person you are. They say what kind of beliefs you have. And what kind of beliefs you have are dependent on the life you've had. And you can fucking change those. But I'm realizing that everything I used to do used to be because somebody was watching. I had to prove. I don't have to prove shit anymore.
And nobody is watching.
Nobody is watching. Nobody's watching but me, and I can be an asshole.
Welcome
I'm
to
such
New
a
York.
dick.
Nobody's watching.
Nobody cares. No, and if they are, they're probably not paying attention to themselves. But I've realized, I'm like, no, I'm just interested in having the best experience I can.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. This is what I look like. I'm getting older. You know, my face is a little different. You know, I've gained a little weight. I'm like, this is who I am. This is what I got. You know, this is who I am. And when you stop wasting energy trying to be something other than you are, you just have so much more fucking energy. It's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And you're so much more powerful. You're so much more powerful. People who can prim and primp and do all of these things to give this fucking facade take so much energy. But you are so much more powerful when you show up as your fucking self, dude. Like, that shit is more powerful than any amount of money or BBL or fucking primming or whatever the fuck. It doesn't matter, dude. You can't buy cool and you can't fake authenticity.
Practically Happy is an anti-BBL podcast.
I wonder, so this is the first pages of the thing that I lost. I wonder if I can read it. It's technically my morning pages, which I don't usually read.
Before that, and then I would love to for you to share if you feel so compelled.
Oh yeah, what do you got?
My signifier. So when I do readings, I usually shuffle until something flies out for me, and I take that as a signifier for my own point of view.
Cool.
Something that personally needs to be said to me, even if I'm reading for someone else. This is my card.
Okay.
And then I give readings for someone else. Mine came out to be the 9 of Cups, which indicates to me to just receive. Sometimes I can take this as it's okay to enjoy mundane things, and then at other times, which fuck
Enjoyment, dude. I'm all about that right now.
I believe right now it would instruct me and anyone listening that you will gain so much in being a better receiver, being a better not trying to transmit or transmute as much as you are trying to receive in order to gain the vocabulary to better transmute in the future, whether or not to just have better perspective.
Ease.
Yeah.
It's about ease. You know, you can try to squeeze water from a stone, but fuck that. We like certainty a lot, especially those of us who grew up in environments which made no fucking sense. Because you're like, oh, okay, you're one person in the morning, you're a different person at night, and we have food, we don't have food, we go to school, I don't have to go to school. They say, like, it makes no sense.
No.
It makes no sense. So you look for order, and you look for meaning, and you look for certainty, because the basic things that you should be able to depend on, which make you safe enough to be able to go into the world, you don't have. So I've realized that certainty rests in the negative, because you can definitely fail.
Yeah.
For fucking sure. You can make that go really poorly. We know you can do that. I know I can do that. But you have to trust that you might be able to make it go really well. But the positive possibility rests in uncertainty.
Yeah.
And no matter how much we say we want a thing, and I will wrap it up because it's something else I've learned. I'm learning a lot of stuff right now.
I love it.
Is that
go for it.
so often in life, we are given really amazing gifts, but we're not able to receive them because we won't let ourselves receive them. We don't know how yet. So sometimes somebody can give you something, but if you don't have one, the ability to receive that gift, or two, the time and ability to use that gift, it's basically useless. Being able to accept things and like accept that things like might be good and like things are possible, like that's the thing that you have to learn how to let yourself do, because we will choose a familiar hell 1,000 times over an unfulfilliar heaven.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
knowing
so many
that,
chills this fucking episode. Like
And I
my
will-
spine can't fucking handle you more.
I will wrap it up.
I am so glad this is recorded.
This is fun. I enjoy
I
this
honestly
stuff.
feel blessed by your ability to just cover these subjects in such a short amount of time, and I feel like I've been taken on this journey, and
Aw,
so
dude, I'm
much
just
of it
grateful
resonates.
for the opportunity. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful.
I can't wait to listen to this back. I really am
honestly,
feeling-
I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to do this and to hear that, because as I was going through this dark night of the soul, like I really thought my life was over. I was never going to make art ever again.
And I think a lot of creatives that are listening
Dude.
know that.
And you got to go through the dark night of the soul, man, because if you try to fight it, it's just going to get worse. You can't wind yourself around a bomb. You have to let it break apart so you can emerge. And like, it's just such a gift for me now, because when I was inside of it, I was like, what's the good story? I got to make a good story. And I was fronting, you know, people are like, oh, you make so much art, you're so good. And I'm like, you don't even know, dude. I'm coming apart at the fucking seams and like just contributing to that image of me being a productive artist or whatever. And so it's such a gift for me to be able to move through this thing that I just thought, I'm like, well, life is over. And to be able to receive the gift of it, really, the wisdom, and then be at the end, be able to be like,
Cool beans.
Did you want to read anything before we wrap up, or do you want to cut it there?
Let me see let me see. So this one is going to get cut off at the end. Let me see how far it goes, because it's kind of everything I was talking about. You know what? Why not? If toughness is about what you can bear, there's a cap on that. You can be mighty in what you can withstand, almost indomitable, but there's a cap. There's a limit. Eventually, what you bear yourself against will break you. Resistance doesn't really work. But a thing about being broken means you must be rebuilt, and you are the only one that can do it. You can go a long time with things that don't really work. You can mask 1,000 different ways. You can be spiritually like a person on the street with a half-broken and heavy cart and a badly wounded limb. But project bullshit. Use all your energy to generate an Instagram acceptable image and facade to fool others and inevitably assist in their own feelings of unworthiness and need to lie and mask can generate a proxy, a lying likeness that will assist others in disliking themselves. What a shit show. Why contribute your precious life to that lame charade? Fuck Mark Zuckerberg. What the fuck has he done for you lately? But when you do reach the point when you can't mask anymore, can no longer hold the self together who so badly wants to break so something can be revealed, that is where the real life begins. It is the end of bullshit. And at the beginning of bullshit, and at the beginning, bullshit is all you know. Bullshit with kernels of truth. Terry Crews, the great, lovable, tough guy who was broken open, broken up, and been reborn a few times, talks about the point when the bullshit doesn't work anymore. That line of credit is shot, but you're still trying to use the card. But the amazing thing, he says, is when you start taking responsibility, that credit shoots back up, but it's even stronger. It's like cash in your hand, I'd add. Just enough, always in your pocket, to get what you need, no more, no less. Responsibility is actually, truly, your ability to respond. You can't be responsible if you don't have the capacity to respond. When you are stuck in reaction, reactivity, and protecting yourself from things you know you'll have a reaction to, you can't be responsible for yourself, your life, your desires. You don't have the energy. And shit, you're not even home to answer the door and tend to the house of the body. And then I lost the last 2 pages. But essentially how it ends.
It sounds like you could take this podcast, like transcript it and finish your
For
work.
sure.
Essentially how it ends is that you are not even in your body anymore enough to be present because you're so busy reacting. And it's exactly everything I said. There are many addictions. Some of them are more obvious, but we all have lots of different addictions. And I had the great gift of witnessing what the more obvious addictions did to the people I loved, because I got to witness what happened to that person's body when, you know, drugs took them off for some place that was safer for them to be than it felt to be inside of that body. And like, I had that great gift. But when you are willing and courageous enough to really open your heart and look at yourself and fucking take stock and take responsibility and live with like love and compassion and really fierce fucking gentleness, then like you accept the world in all its like broken splendor. So ends with broken splendor. That's why I was like, oh my God, it's got the word in it. And then it was off. And I don't know, it's in the backyard with the Rottweiler named Nero. So we'll see.
Well, I hope you get it back. And I
digress.
can't wait to read what you write. I can't wait for you to publish.
Thanks, dude. I'm just so grateful because, and it's not, I guess we can, it feels a little dark to say, but I thought I was going to die without ever writing my book, man. And I was like, fuck. You know, when things get really dark and you're like, damn it, I couldn't do the thing. So I'm just grateful that after all these years of my life feeling so called with my writing that I got to a point where I couldn't write myself out of it anymore because I couldn't say anything true. And now I feel like I'm at the point where I got that last little keystone where I was like, the story is not true enough. That's why you can't publish your book, because the story is not true enough. You got to get broken up first. You say you feel you're meant to be great, but I realized that the great thing that I was meant for is my life. The great thing that I was meant for is my fucking life. It is not to become great. It is not to become other than myself. What I am meant for, the great thing I'm meant for, that you're meant for, is your life. That's your great thing. And I was like, I couldn't get to a point where I could really speak that truth until I had been absolutely broken up as a person. So I'm just grateful that I'm like, oh my God, I can put my writing together now. It's so nice. I'm just grateful people want to listen. So anyway, this has been fun.
Well,
you guys are
are
great.
fantastic. Your synthesis of these things has just been like incredible to watch, and I honestly can't wait to listen to this podcast.
I'm so grateful. I'm fully grateful every day. So thanks you guys for having me. It's been
Thank you more.
And for the muffins, very good muffins.
Oh, you're welcome.
And the palatial bathroom. Anybody who wants to come on the podcast, I'm telling you, palatial bathroom, immaculate muffins. But I digress. And that's where we're going to end it.
Yes! But I digress.
You need to start saying this is a Faraday Cage production in the fucking podcast.